So I have a question for you, and I want you to think of the answer in your head. Don't yell it out. What is the best return that you have ever received from an investment? And I don't want you to get sappy. I don't want you to say that your best investment was actually your marriage or your kids or the love you get from your cat. I'm talking strictly a financial return on investment. Maybe you bought a lottery ticket and you won big, and if that's the case, come talk to me afterwards. We have some things we'd like you to help out at the church. But maybe you bought in to one of the FANG stocks when they were first offered. You know what the FANG stocks are? Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. If you bought one of those stocks when they first came out, again, come talk to me. We have some things we'd like to talk to you about. Maybe that investment wasn't something so glitzy. Maybe the best investment you've ever made was your house because it appreciated more than you ever thought that it would. Or maybe that investment was in getting an MBA that helped you advance your career that it never would have happened before. But no matter what it is that you're thinking about in your head right now, it's nowhere near the best investment ever. In fact, it's nothing compared to what's been called the most profitable financial investment that anyone has ever made in all time. You see, it took place back in 1995. There was a Cuban immigrant to America named Miguel and his wife Jackie. They were wondering what to do with all of their hard-earned money that they had saved throughout their lifetime. It was almost $250,000. One of the ideas that they thought about, they toyed with the idea of maybe helping out their 31-year-old son, something that many parents have thought about. Because at that age and a little bit younger, our children, they don't have a steady job sometimes. They may not have much as far as cash reserves, and they're still developing their credit. So our kids, they turn to the one financial institution that might just take a risk on them, the bank of mom and dad. Parents help them maybe buy their first car or their first home. Well, here's what Miguel and Jackie decided to do. They handed their son almost every cent that they have saved to put into a fledgling business that he thought might work. He hadn't even started it yet. And he didn't sugarcoat the dangers. He told them that he may go bankrupt, and if he did, they'd lose everything. He told them, I want you to know just how risky this is. But they took the risk. They gave him almost everything that they had saved, and they assumed a 3.4% stake in this yet-to-be-formed business. Well, he didn't go bankrupt. You see, he thought of this idea of creating this company that would sell books online, Amazon.com. And as you know, Amazon is now the second most valuable business in the world, valued at around $874 billion with a B dollars. His parents, that small little investment that they risked on their son, that 3.4% stake in a business, they are now worth about $30 billion. You see, that return on an investment is more than 12 million%. Can't even imagine something at 12 million%. Without a doubt, that is the greatest financial return on investment in all of history. As you know, we are going through the Sermon on the Mount in this sermon series. And today, we get to the part where Jesus talks about the one investment that he said would be the greatest that we could ever make. Also, the one that would have the greatest return. I'm going to read his words here in a second, and then we're going to look at three questions that he poses. Three profound questions that he raises that will determine whether each and every one of us will make that investment. So let me read you what he had to say. He said, "Don't store up your treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. Your eye is a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is good, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is bad, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." First, I want to talk about this investment. Jesus tells us that we have two choices. We will invest in the things of God, or we will invest in the things of this world. One, Jesus says, is a smart investment. The other one, not so smart. But he lays out these two choices. First, there's the choice to invest in heaven. Some people have no idea what that really means. Think of it this way. Imagine you're walking through a field with a metal detector. And you're walking along, and all of a sudden, it starts making noises that you had never heard it make before. You start to dig into the ground, and you find something more than an old watch or a nickel. You find gold, and a lot of gold. And it doesn't take you long to realize that this entire field is full of gold. But nobody knows it but you. So you cover that back up so nobody else finds it, and you head home and you start to go online to figure out who owns that field, and you find out it's for sale. Buying it, though, would take everything that you have. Every penny that you have, you would have to use it all to buy this field. But let's be honest, who cares? It's a field full of gold. Your savings swapped for that field? Who wouldn't make that swap? I'd say I made that story up, but I didn't. It's straight out of the Bible. It says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. In his excitement, he hid it again and sold everything he owned to get enough money to buy the field." The idea is that investing in heaven is worth so much more than investing in what we have here on this earth. And if you get it, if you really get it, you wouldn't think twice of moving your resources from one area to the other. The payoffs are so different in scale. If you see it, if you get it, if you understand it, you wouldn't hesitate to do it. And we, as Christians, we should get that. Because every one of us is going to die someday. So investing in the things here on this earth instead of investing in the things in heaven is not a smart investment. In fact, the Bible brings us a little bit of a harsh reality about the nature of that investment when it says, people who boast of their wealth don't understand they will die just like animals. And I hate it when I see a typo from where I'm reading. So I'll go to the next slide because I don't like this. You've probably heard of the name Rockefeller. When adjusted for inflation, John D. Rockefeller was widely considered the wealthiest American who has ever lived and the richest man in all of modern history. Right now, Jeff Bezos of Amazon is the richest individual person in the world with a net worth of about $112 billion. Rockefeller's wealth, though, when adjusted for inflation, would be over $400 billion. He made his money in oil, and at the peak, he controlled 90% of the American oil industry. When Rockefeller died, someone asked his accountant, how much did John D. leave behind? You know how his accountant answered that question? All of it. There's nothing that you can take with you when you die. Another story that Jesus tells us, he says that a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, what should I do? I don't have room for all of my crops. And then he said, I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. Then I'll have room enough to store all of my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and I'll say to myself, my friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, you will die this very night. Who will get everything you worked for? Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. You can't take it with you, but you can send it ahead. What if I were to offer you today $1,000 to spend however you wanted to? Now, don't get your hopes up. That's purely fiction. I do not have $1,000 to give to anyone. But if I were to offer that, you'd take me up on that offer, wouldn't you? But suppose when I gave it to you, I gave you a choice. What if I told you, you can either have this $1,000 today, or a year from now, I'll give you $10 million. Would you still want the $1,000 today? Or maybe it would be easier if we talked about this in terms of marshmallows. Probably looking at me, what in the world is he talking about marshmallows for? Because there's this social experiment that was done. The test was they asked kids, you can have one marshmallow, but if you wait and don't eat the marshmallow, we'll come back and we'll give you 2 marshmallows. It's an interesting experiment, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so take a look.
Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now.
You need volume.
When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have 2. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right.
All right. I think Luke's phone was plugged up to the volume, so we need to plug the cord back into the laptop. And Luke just runs in from the back. There you go. All right, let's watch it again.
And then I'll come back.
It smells yummy. It smells really good.
It's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. So I'm going to leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did? You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you to give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
So that's the deal with investing in eternity. If you put your investment focus there instead of here, the payoff is so much greater. So how do you invest in eternity? How do you store up treasure in heaven? When you give to the work of God here on earth, it's credited to you, credited to that eternal account. It's as simple as that. And we find this all through the Bible. It says in the book of Luke, it says, and if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? Also in Luke, it says this, when you put on a luncheon or a banquet, don't invite your friends, brothers, relatives, and rich neighbors, for they will invite you back, and that will be your only reward. Instead, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Then at the resurrection of the righteous, God will reward you for inviting those who could not repay you. The Apostle Paul jumps in on this as well. In the book of Philippians, he says this, as you know, you Philippians were the only ones who gave me financial help when I first brought you the good news, and then traveled on from Macedonia. No other church did this. Even when I was in Thessalonica, you sent help more than once. I don't say this because I want a gift from you. Rather, I want you to receive a reward for your kindness. Then Paul, in writing to a young pastor he was mentoring named Timothy, he says this, tell those rich in the world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, and to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasury that will last, gaining life that is truly life. Be generous to the things of God. The primary way you do that is to be generous to the church of which you are a part, whether it's this local church or another church if you're visiting with us. The real call of the Bible is to be radical in your generosity. I mentioned that Jesus raises 3 questions, and how you answer those questions will determine whether you will make this investment, whether you are the kind of person who would even consider investing in the things of God. These questions are deeply important to us. Questions that each and every one of us should wrestle with. The first question is this: where is your heart? And what did Jesus say about this? He said, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. So where is your heart? The profound spiritual reality, where you invest, and I'm talking primarily about your time and your money, is where you have placed your heart. And where you place your heart will determine how you invest. So where's your heart? There's a book called The Day America Told the Truth. And it was built on a series of surveys to get to what people really thought and felt. In fact, there's a whole chapter on money. And quite frankly, that chapter might be one of the most disturbing chapters you ever read, because this is what they found out. For $10 million, 1 out of every 4 of us would abandon our friends and renounce our faith. 1 out of every 4 of us. For $10 million, we would also become a prostitute for a week. 1 out of every 14 of us would murder someone for $10,000 or $10 million. If that shocks you, which I hope it does, hold on, though. They lowered the amount to $5 million, and they got the exact same results. They then lowered it to $4 million. Same results. They went down to $3 million. Same results. They had no idea how far they could actually go because they were a little depressed to ask to go down any further. But you imagine that? For $3 million, 1 in 4 of us would renounce our faith. 1 in 14 of us would murder someone. Jesus is asking us to wrestle with a deep and penetrating question. Where have you taken your heart? And more importantly, where do you want your heart to be? If you want your heart to be aligned with God, then your treasure will need to be reallocated so that it is also aligned with God. You'll need to follow His guidelines, His principles, and His instructions. You will look at all that you have and say, God, how can I make sure that first and foremost, in a way that's undeniable and unmistakable, How can I make sure that I'm managing my money, really his money, in a way that positions my heart to be in alignment with yours? How can I make sure that everything I do with the money that I have positions my heart with yours? Now, when you ask that, does it mean that you have to sell everything that you own and give it to the church? Absolutely not. It is not wrong to manage your money in a way that pays your bills, provides college for your kids, and cares for your retirement. It is not wrong to take vacations and enjoy life. It's not bad to possess things. It's just bad for things to possess you. It's not wrong to enjoy life. What's wrong is making enjoyment all that life is about. It's not wrong to have treasures. What's wrong is to treasure your treasures. What Jesus is after is where you have placed your heart. The destination you have determined for yourself. Is it on the things of this earth, or is it on the things of God? Are you driven more and more for things at the expense of being generous to God? Does God get your first fruits or the leftovers? Do you eat your fill, and only when you are done and so full that you couldn't eat another bite? Do you whistle God over like a dog and say, "Here, boy," and scrape off the leftovers of your plate? Now, that might make you cringe a little bit at that idea, but let's be honest. Isn't that how we sometimes treat God? Or maybe tempted to treat God? There's an old story about a farmer who promised to give God one of the twin calves that his cow had just delivered. And his wife asked him, "Well, which calf is the Lord's?" And the farmer said, "Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make a difference because I'm just going to give God one of them when they're grown." A few weeks later, the farmer came into the farmhouse with a long, sad look on his face. And his wife said, "Well, what's wrong?" The farmer said, "The Lord's calf died this morning." You see, it isn't the way it works with us if we let things go unchecked. We tend to go towards that route. Often God isn't made a priority in our lives. So here's the question. Does God get our first and our best, or does he get what's left over? After we've satisfied everything else that we can imagine satisfying. Or simply when it's convenient, or when there's extra left over. If you are a follower of Christ, and there may be some here today that you don't know whether you're a follower of Christ, or there may be some online watching that haven't made that decision yet. But if you consider yourself a follower of Christ, and that's where you want your heart to be, question is the same, is always the same for all of us. God, what do you want me to do with what I have? And the more you invest in the things of God, the more your heart will follow. It's like if you buy stock in a company. Before you bought any stock in whatever company that is, you never really thought about how their stock was doing. But once you invest in them, you read every article that you can find on them, you tune in to every podcast, read every blog and every tweet, you follow the value of the stock, you're dialed in a way that you never were before. You see, when you start investing in the things of God, you'll be amazed at how your heart starts to beat faster about the things of God. You want a heart for him. You want what he's about on this planet. You want a heart invested in eternity, shaped by his kingdom, motivated by his values. If you want all of that, then put your treasure there and your heart will follow. The second question that Jesus raises, where's your vision? And his words said this, your eye is a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is good, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is bad, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. What is your vision? Jesus makes it clear that when it comes to money, not only is there a heart issue, but there's also a vision issue. If your sights are set on God, if that's the vision you have for your life and what life is all about, then it will flood into your soul, and you will naturally take what you have and invest in the things of God. But if you live for the things of this earth, you will have no vision for what God is doing in the world. Your inner world will be a dark, dark place, unable to see and unable to care. I'm reminded of a person who isn't as well known now as she used to be. Helen Keller. One of the most remarkable women to ever live. When she was just a baby, just 19 months old, she was stricken with an illness that left her deaf and blind. With her enormous physical challenges, education seemed out of the question. But when someone tries, really tries, within 2 years, she could both read and write. She went on to graduate cum laude from Radcliffe College. She went on to devote her life to publicly aiding the deaf and the blind. She was once asked a question about what would be worse than being blind. Her answer was to have sight without vision. You see, when your eyes are set on God, you see the world the way that He sees the world. You see what you have and you give from what you have. Serving the Christian movement and God's efforts to bring this sin-stained world back to Him. If that's the vision and the investment that comes with it, that's all that matters. But too many of us have the wrong vision, and it makes our life dark. Like someone sitting on a boat out in the middle of the lake thinking to themselves that this is what life is all about. No, it's not. The boat and the lake, they aren't bad. Enjoy them. But don't tell me that's what life is all about, because it's not. If that's all that your vision is about, for your one and only life that you have, that's sight without vision. Which brings me to the final question that Jesus poses. Who is your leader? Remember how Jesus posed this question. He said, no one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So who is your leader? Jesus brings up one of the most fundamental truths of human existence. There is only one true leader in your life. You can no more follow two leaders or have two gods than simultaneously walk in both directions at the same time. When two things in your life are operating on different values, with different priorities, and taking you in two opposite directions, you will ultimately have to choose. And if we're honest, we don't like that. We don't like having to make that decision. There was a pastor who once wrote about a man who came to talk to him about marital difficulty. And the man admitted to the pastor that he had been having an affair with his assistant, and his wife found out. And his life was now in complete shambles. The pastor told him, you only have three options. First, you can end the relationship with your assistant and seek reconciliation with your wife. And the man said, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. He said, well, your second option is to divorce your wife and marry your assistant. The guy said, well, but we've been married for 20 years. We have 2 kids. I don't think I can do that. He said, well, your third and final option is to end both of the relationships and start from scratch. The man said, well, I can't do that either. The pastor said, listen, you only have 3 options. You know it and I know it. And we also know that only one of those will please God. Now, we can sit here and talk for months, but the real issue is whether or not you're going to obey God. If you're not willing to choose the one option that is right, your life will never be anything more than a mess. And he was right. Love one or love the other. You can't have it both ways. And that's the way it is with God and money. Jesus says that God and money are like competing gods. And the reason is simple. They have different orders. They issue different commands. If you obey money alone, you cannot help but disobey God. They have diametrically opposed value systems. And I'm not talking about sound money management, because the Bible teaches these principles probably better than any other book I've ever read. What I'm talking about are the orders that money gives when it's in charge of your life. When getting all you can, canning all you get, and then sitting on that can is your ultimate financial plan. Rhymed a little bit. When more, richer, bigger, better becomes everything that matters to you. When money becomes king, lord, and ruler of your life. When it has more of a hold on you than God does, money has just become your God. Let me give you a gut check here this morning. If you walked in here considering yourself a Christ follower, if you walked in here believing in God and saying that He's in control of your life, and the minute you realized that I was talking about money, if you got defensive or clenched your fists, became uncomfortable, that tells me that you may not have settled that question yet about the competing issues of God and money. See, here's what I think. I think that just about every one of you here today wants to give your heart to God, wants to have His vision for the world inside of you, and wants Him as your leader. I believe that. about each of you. Because I don't think you would be here if that wasn't the case. Or at least you wouldn't be here if you were not at least open to that option. But what I don't know is whether it's true of you or not. Whether that's what you really want, whether you're open to it, or whether it's really who you are. Because it's easy to make your primary investment to be the things of this world. To have your vision never look beyond yourself. And to allow more of your life to be led by money than you would ever dream possible. But that can change. You see, you can put your treasure where you want your heart to be. You can make God and His kingdom the heart of your investment portfolio. You can catch a vision of what God is wanting to do and then put your resources into play to see it become a reality. You can let God be the true leader of your life and let money be what it should be, something that serves, not something that is served. And you can start right now. With every purchasing decision you make, every investment decision that you make, every money management decision that you make, ask where you want your heart to be. What is your vision, and who is your leader? And then remind yourself that God is watching the entire decision-making process. Ask yourself, would this make Him proud? Would this honor Him? Is this how He wants me to live? Heavenly Father, Lord, I want to thank You for these decisions that You have, these questions that You have given us. Help us to make the right decisions, Lord. Help us to always have a positive answer to those questions. Help our heart to be with You. Help You to be our vision, and help us each and every day to surrender to You as our leader. Thank You for everything that You've done for us. Thank You for coming to this earth and dying for us. In Your Son's name, amen.